Say something.
Hi, guys. I was waiting for the music to go off.
Calm down.
Simmer down now.
Oh, that's my wife's favorite phrase. Simmer. She tried that with me once. She'll never do it again. I'll show you simmer. How's Lindsay?
Drowning in laundry.
Okay.
My family and I are going on a lovely vacation next week to Universal Studios, and I am packing for everyone because Mr. Squirrel is working. So that's been fun.
It's not that hard. You need 3 shirts, 3 pairs of shorts.
You would think, but then I also have to get everyone else's medication, and I have to get matching shirts because my mother-in-law wants us to have matching shirts.
Oh, dear God. You're not one of them.
I'm not. I said my mother-in-law.
Oh, no. That's verboten.
But other than that, I am doing well. And we have an interesting show for y'all today. We are here to talk about the life and greatness of Miss Erin Pizzey.
Yeah, so I guess we should, get the elephant out of the room because there are conflicting things being
There are
said.
conflicting reports.
So the reports are one that she passed on the 4th. And then you said you heard one on the 6th, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other reports out that she has not passed yet. So what we're choosing to do and want to talk about her life today doesn't really matter in terms of whether she's passed or not, because she's an amazing woman. I've had the privilege of meeting her once at a conference many years ago, briefly, like 3 minutes of if that. But I also had many conversations with her via email because I've been trying to get her on my podcast for 2 years. Probably over that time, give or take 24 emails back and forth. What a sweet woman. Very kind, very generous, willing to come on. Her health just wasn't allowing it. We had set up a couple of times, and then she would message me, I just can't do it. And I totally understand and respect her. She was 85 or 6, I believe.
86.
86. And I appreciated that she at least was willing to try. It just didn't work out, which I'm a little bummed about because, I've talked long about how I have certain people that I look up to. Warren Farrell is one. She's another one. She's top 2 with me along with Warren. She's been doing this literally for 50 years. And, went through hell. Why am I going to blame you, Steve, about her? I just saw his thing. It's, having heard her speak, like I said, at a conference once, having read, I don't think I've read all of her books, but most of them. I think there's one I might have missed. And knowing what she went through, which will be far worse than what you and I have gone through, but very similar, right? And so I thought it would be good to talk to her about it, or talk to you guys about her, what little I know, kind of share her life, her story, and honor her, because if anyone deserves it, she does.
I agree. Of course, I got my start in this wonderful sphere as a teenager. And when I was doing more research into it, to have something to lob back at my fellow females who all went to the kind of 4-year brainwashing camp that you go to and you lose all common fucking sense. Her books are one of the first ones that I grabbed and read, and all common sense, and none of it was misogynistic. Everyone kept saying she was a giant raging misogynist, which is amusing because she did so much work for women. But I would actually argue that she's the opposite of misogyny because she allows that women are full functioning humans with all of the sins, vices, and violence that comes with being human. We're capable of the whole range. because we're human. And
Mhm.
and she never sugarcoated that, and she just wanted the violence to end against everybody. And the world hated her for it. They absolutely tore her to pieces
Mhm.
for it, for stating the obvious.
And
And
we'll get into some of the things that were done to her because I think it's important that we do, because it shows how strong a person, but more particularly a woman, she was. Right? Women talk all the time about, well, I'm strong and independent. Compared to her, none of you are, as far as I'm concerned. Not one of you, and that includes you, Lindsay. No offense to you, and you know that, but um, what she did with her life, I wish I could do a fraction of it. You know, I do what I do, you do what you do, but what we do pales in comparison to the work she did.
well, I'm allowed to. I can do what I do because she paved the
There you
way
go.
first. She was one of
Yeah.
the absolute first women, first anybody to stand up and say, "Wait a minute, this narrative that we've been pushing isn't fair." Um, and when she first did it, she didn't think that it was anything controversial. She's just it's just the other side of the coin. And people who were applauding her one day turned on her in a second, and suddenly she's like the devil.
Yep.
And she never backed down. A lesser person, and many people have backed down from that kind of,
Mhm.
just vitriol. And she never did. She never wavered. As far as I'm concerned, her opinions really didn't change in 50 years.
No, they didn't.
No, they
They
pretty
didn't.
much stayed the same. Um, she stayed very consistent, and I applaud her for that. She's one of my heroes because what am I always saying? Evil prevails when good men do nothing, and she refused to do nothing and was punished for it.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, I just want to kind of recap a little bit. I think everybody is familiar with the name, but maybe you don't realize what some of the things she did. So, um, she was roughly 40, 41, 42 years old, somewhere in there, and saw the problem with domestic violence. And in 19, if I remember right, 71, she opened a shelter in
19
London.
she formed the coalition in 69. She opened the shelter in
Shelter.
71.
Okay, yeah, which was and is considered the first refuge for battered women and children anywhere in the world, like the first one ever. And having done some research on it, and the place was packed almost immediately, overwhelmed, if you prefer that word. And she was the driver of all of it. It was her. It was her baby. She did the majority of the work. She got the money, all that stuff. And when you think about, for all its bad on the domestic violence shelter side, that it doesn't treat men, and we talked about that and all that, it does also do good. It's helped millions of women. And that's not something to take lightly, right? Or to put down in any way. There are millions of women that have been helped, and it was Erin's work that led to that. And then, 3, 4 years later, her first book came out, which was Scream Quietly, which talked about domestic violence. And really, you should, if you have not read that book, mind you, it was written 50 years ago, everything that's in it is still germane today, right? And she talked about what is domestic violence and how it was a hidden epidemic before anybody else was even really talking about it, right? It was a seminal work in my opinion. And it's, I have a copy in the other room. I meant to grab it to bring it in here. Mine is, I've read through it so many times it's worn out. It's a paperback, but it's worn out, right? Because I've gone back to it literally dozens and dozens of times in my work and in my writing. And then later on, the big work, and the other one I would highly, highly recommend you read. And she wrote that one, I think, in 82. The dates get fuzzy, so excuse me if I get them wrong. Where it was called Prone to Violence. And I have that one in the other room as well, which was the one that made them turn on her, right? Because she very clearly and unequivocally stated in that book that from her own firsthand observations, having run the first shelter in the world, that domestic violence was not a gender issue, it was a human one. And that's like, as Lindy said, they turned on her like that.
That. And it's where I have been saying for years that violence is a human problem, not a gendered one. And I am paraphrasing her in that book when she says it. She did hundreds of interviews, and she found that women that were violent were often just as violent to their partners. That it was reciprocal, it was mutual. So it was both parties were equally violent to each other. And she also found that children mimic what they see. So in the case that a father was violent towards the mother, the children, male and female, would grow up to exhibit violence in turn. And she wanted it all to stop. She's like, well, we just need to start treating it, equally. We'll open a shelter for men. And when she tried to do that, you would have thought that she was trying to kill kittens.
Or puppies.
Or puppies. Because that skewed the narrative. And she was a feminist icon for her work for women. And then the feminists turned on her because how dare you suggest women are equally capable of being violent humans? And she maintained through her entire life that it's the human part. Women are humans just like men.
Yep.
And if you're going to claim that women are equal to men, then you must accept that they are also equally capable of being vile, horrible humans. I'm paraphrasing, of course. But that was her point of view. That was her stance. And she stayed consistent with that until she'll probably go to her deathbed. She is on her deathbed.
She was on her deathbed, yeah.
With
And
that,
she may have passed. We just don't know for
we
sure.
just don't know for sure.
And I don't want to spread anything that we don't know for sure.
But she maintained consistency, and I applaud her for that because so many other public figures will flip-flop. They will give in to pressure, and which brings us around to the horrible things. She's had to move several countries. She had to flee England and come to the States. In New Mexico, she has. I've been to. I've visited the buildings that she created in New Mexico, and seen her name on the side of the buildings. She's well known there. And then she had to flee there as well and go to what other countries? She's been all over the place because of the people who want to hurt her for daring to speak on behalf of men and boys. And honestly, they say, well, she flipped sides. She became a men's rights activist. I would argue that she really didn't.
Anything but, yeah.
I would argue that she didn't become a men's rights activist. I would argue that the men's rights side is just the only one that didn't want to, didn't threaten to unalive her. But even, ironically enough, even when she was still firmly on the feminist side and she was getting her first shelter opened, she reported the women who were being extreme. So the women the feminists within her organization, they wanted to bomb I forget where in London, but they wanted to set a bomb off as a demonstration. She outed them because she's like, that's not what this organization is about. And violence only begets more violence. So she outed them for that. And that was like the first crack in the dam. They're like, wait, no, you can't, but we're doing this for the good. And she's like, but again, violence begets more violence. So if you do this, you're no better than the men that we are protecting these women from. And they didn't like that.
Well, I mean, one of the things, and she talked about it in Prone to Violence, that she found after having run a shelter for a decade at that point, was that, and this is the first instance I'm aware of that it was ever really brought up, that domestic violence, a lot of it was reciprocal, right? And the majority of it, by the way, is reciprocal. It is both parties doing it, both the man and the woman. And, she would talk about that. And that, again, they being the feminists, didn't want to allow that. To them, it had to be a zero sum game. Only men abuse, only women are victims. And she was like, no, like you were just saying, she's, some consider her a men's rights activist. Some consider her a feminist, by the way. She was a human rights activist. She is the very definition of a human rights
And she's
activist.
an egalitarian.
Yes. And so she was, as you were saying, reporting women that were themselves violent, not just like in your instance where you're talking about bomb threats, but who were perpetrators of domestic violence. She was reporting them to the police. Um, because having done that kind of work, having been, having run a men's male victims domestic violence group, there were times I had guys coming in that I figured out really quickly they were the actual abusers, not the abused, right? And we got them out fast because I wasn't tolerating that. If you know what to look for and you kind of figure it out yourself after a while, you can kind of tell. And so she was more experienced than I ever was. She could see that some of these women were the ones perpetrating the violence and trying to deal with it, trying to help the men. And she unequivocally stated, starting over 50 years ago, that both men and women can be victims or perpetrators. That a lot of it, by the way, and I'm kind of recalling some of the stuff in the book, a lot of it translates to how they were brought up or traumas they experienced, right? She went into all of that. What's happening is back then it was all poo-pooed, right? I'm trying to be polite about it. They came for her. And none of this is true. It's all false, blah, blah, blah. And so what has happened is over the past 50 or so years since she said all that, it's all been proven true time and again, right? Every word she said has proven to be true. But she paid the price for it. And she never, ever backed down. And I say to her, what an amazing woman. I aspire to be like her. I really do because, and I put her right up there with Warren. Warren's the same way, right? Warren, I would say the very same things about Warren. They went through hell and still do. Um, Yet they never back down. Um, when you think about the effect she had politically, the effect she had just helping victims in general, um, raising awareness on the issue for 50 years, she talked about it. As I said, she was so selfless with her time. She was more than willing to come on with me. It just didn't work out because of her health. But had she been healthy, I have no doubt she probably would have come on multiple times, right? Because she wanted to get the word out. And privately, she said to me, and I'm not sharing anything she wouldn't have a problem with. She's like, I need people to carry forward for me because she knew she was coming to the end of her life. And I said, I will absolutely be doing that, right? I talk about domestic violence often. And, you know, as I move forward and as you move forward, Lindsay, I hope others join us because until more of us speak out and become as brave as she was, as an amazing a person as she was, things aren't going to change. That's the reality of it.
And I always come back to well, in her so we were talking about her observations on children and how they're raised and how often children raised with the example of violence then go on to exhibit violence themselves. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and she kept coming around to um, violent adults create violent children, and then and so forth and so on. And even when she came at it from a problem of let's protect the children, even that was lambasted as, well, no, mothers would never hurt their children.
Right.
Um, and I mean, it's not just adult domestic violence that she spoke against. It was all domestic violence, including that perpetuated against children, because for the longest time, it was almost culturally ingrained that one, women don't beat their husbands, and two, fathers are the ones who beat their children, not the other way around. Um, And back when she was getting started, domestic violence was one of those things, much like infidelity, that you just didn't talk about.
Right.
It was kept very hush hush. If someone saw that someone was beating their wife, the church or the community would try and stop it, but no one would call the cops. Um,
Wasn't even illegal
it
for a long
wasn't it wasn't even illegal for the longest time. Um, and she got a lot of laws changed, and
And
she
people don't remember that, Lindsay, right? She fought to get the laws changed to protect women, and they vilify her for
and
it.
they vilify her for it, and they say that she hates women, which is freaking ridiculous. If
I
you
mean, it's mind blowing to me.
um and she started out helping women, and what I love about her is that she did not go into it with preconceived bias. So she saw a problem, she saw women being hurt, and she decided to do something about it. And then in the course of doing something about it, she was given more information, and she found out that men are also being hurt as well. So she just expanded her, okay, well, let's do something about that too. And they wouldn't let her.
Mhm.
Um, and she ended up fighting against people that she stood shoulder to shoulder for in the very beginning. And I think that's what really bothers me the most, is that these people who were praising her in their early writings as being this brave inspiration, the minute that she dared suggest that women might be responsible, because there's that accountability thing we're not very good at, um, she was vilified for it. And women who said they were her friends and her allies turned on her like that
Instantly.
instantly. And it is unfortunate, but it is no different now than it was back then. I mean, I am nowhere near what she is now, nor I would claim to be. But
Mhm.
the minute I try and hold women accountable, individual bad women accountable for their individual bad behaviors, I get vilified constantly. Never to the degree that she got it, obviously, but still to the same effect of I'm a traitor to my gender. Oh, I must hate women. I'm doing this for attention. I'm a pick me. I'm all these things because I dare hold women accountable for their actions the same way we hold men accountable for their actions. And
Mhm.
that's what blows my mind.
Well, I mean, having, like I said, I've read all her stuff, and the numbers get crazy with me. But I remember reading where she said that of like the first 100 women that came into her shelter, roughly 60% of them were as violent or more violent than the men they left. And that was the ultimate deal breaker at that time, right? That was the one that exploded everything, because she was speaking about her direct experiences with it, what she actually saw, and it challenged what feminism was pushing as the narrative at that time, 50 odd years ago, right? That only men can be perpetrators, only women can be victims. And it blew that narrative completely to shreds. And it's still true today, by the way. Feminism still makes that argument. They'll concede a little bit now, and then they'll quickly go to, but it's not as bad, right? Um, if they'll even concede. A lot of them won't concede. To this day, I run into feminists that will absolutely swear that women cannot be perpetrators. Absolutely swear to it. I remember, and this was somebody from now who worked for the domestic violence shelter testifying to the New York State Family and Children Committee that in all her time being involved with the domestic violence shelter, she had never seen a single instance where a woman had been a perpetrator of domestic violence. And, it was laughable to hear, but it was heard, believe me, right? So, Erin coming forward and talking about this before anybody else was and challenging that narrative, the scary part is we're still there. It's gotten better for sure. At least studies, and again, I attribute to her that this got done. Studies have come out showing that Men are the victims. And, even the shelter studies now, the ones they fund are putting it at a third. Well, if we take their number, roughly 1 in 3 victims are male, then at the minimum, shouldn't 1 in 3 shelters be dedicated towards men? But they're not. There's one in the UK, two in the US. There are 2,000 in the US for women. And that's the stuff that we as advocates and all of you watching need to get out there and talk about, because it's not getting talked about enough. And until we do, nothing's going to change. You know, we need to look to her as our guiding light for it, and honor her memory by going forward with it.
So, I actually had a congressman or whatever representative come to my door a year or so ago, and he wanted to know what I wanted to see on the ballot for my county, and I said I want a domestic violence shelter for men, and his eyes crossed. But the little guy behind him, the guy was taking notes, the aide, and he goes, "Well, men don't need that." I go, "Did you know that if you have a child in the state of Texas over the age of 6, a male child, he is not welcome in a women's shelter? So, what is a woman supposed to do if she's leaving an abusive situation? She's going to stay in an abusive situation because she's not going to leave her child. If she leaves her child, she's not a very good mother. And the same is true the other way." And nobody knows that. And that's one of the things that Erin talked about, is that um, women themselves are forced to stay in domestic violence situations because they can't leave with their male children, so they'll stay. Fathers will stay. Um, Husbands will stay because they want to protect their children. And no one ever really thinks about that. That they're like, "Oh, well, of course you can leave. You can leave with your children. Children are always welcome in the shelter." No, they're not.
No, they're not.
In some states, the child has to be under the age of 12, but in some states, it's as low as 4.
Well, the shelter I was affiliated with, it was 14. But now, mind you, this is 25 years ago, right? So no boy, because they're boys at that age, under the age of 14, was allowed in the shelter. And here's the other thing. I don't know if I've ever shared this before. I wasn't even allowed to know where the shelter was, nor were any of the men on the board. No, were not allowed to know where the shelter was. Let that sink in for a moment, right? They knew I was a victim, not that they would ever admit it. The men on the board were told, we can't tell you where the shelter is. Yet they're supposed to make decisions on it. And there were 2 at the time. I mean, but that's what they want to put through as the message. All men are potential threats, right? Oh, they're on the board of the shelters, but they're still a threat. They're going to go in there and hurt women. When in reality, it was more often than not, women are getting hurt by other women in those shelters. That's a whole other show we could do. Um, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that I'm aware of that someday I want to expose. Others have done it. But it speaks to the conversation being had, and we need to have it because, you know, as I said, Erin talked about this stuff 50 plus years ago, and things have gotten better. I'm not going to say they haven't, but not by much, right? Minuscule improvements. 50 years ago, we didn't have any shelters for men. Now we have 2 in the States, one in the UK, unless it's changed. The numbers.
No, there's only one in the there's one here in Texas, near Dallas, and then there's one in Arkansas.
Batesville, Arkansas. There's a
And
third one coming up, trying to be opened in Washington State. I'm not sure exactly where.
and they had one very briefly in Canada, but he got death threats and he got shut down too. So um it just it baffles me that after 50 years we haven't improved much. And this actually speaks to how you have to give credit where credit is due to the feminists. They have the absolute best PR people out there ever, because they've managed to convince 3 whole generations of women that we can do no wrong, accountability is something that doesn't apply to us, and that all of our privileges are in fact oppression. Um,
Yeah.
and uh, and one of the things that I will maintain is that a privilege is being able to get away with a horrible behavior and have every excuse made for why it is not actually your fault. So a woman beats her child, and it's not her fault. It's because, well, she was beaten as a child, or she has all this stress that her husband is putting her on, or it's never her fault. It is never her fault. Or if she hits her husband, well, he must have done something to make her do it.
I used to hear that one all the time. You must have done something to make her.
What did you do to make her mad?
Yep.
But if you were to say that in reverse, you'd be tarred and feathered in the court of public opinion.
Yep.
Um, and you even Google it. Why is my wife yelling at me? And it comes up with this list of, well, have you done this lately, or have you forgot a birthday, or did you forget an anniversary? You say, why is my husband yelling at me? And it gives you the domestic violence hotline number.
Yeah.
And it I keep coming back to, it's one of the very last true examples of misogyny in our culture, in institutionalized misogyny. Um, because the idea that women, by virtue of being women, are either less human or more human, depending on how you put it, because we are not capable of the same violence that men commit, that is misogyny. You're basically saying that by virtue of being female, by virtue of having ovaries, you are either better than men because you are not as violent as men, or you are not equal to men because, again, we are these fairy princesses that can do no wrong and we're not inherently violent. And in addition to it being misogynistic, as a student of history, I have to laugh because some of the most violent people in history, Olga of Kiev, anyone, were all women.
Yeah.
Catherine the Great, Catherine de' Medici, Mary Queen of Scots, Mary the Tudor, one, Elizabeth the one, Isabella of Castile, Empress Wu Ten, Theodora of, I forgot, the Byzantine Empire, Empress. They were all women and they were all extremely violent. Boudica. Like, there are examples throughout history of women being extremely violent, and that just makes them human. And Erin is one of the very few people that throughout her entire life, she maintained this fact. Women and men, it's a human problem.
Human.
Violence is a human problem, not a gendered one. And I've been saying that, paraphrased, for years.
Well, to your point, I mean, let's talk a little bit about what happened to her, right? So after the book came out, and again, I think it was 82, she started receiving death threats and bomb threats, right? So, and she's talked about it many times. The police were heavily involved. They had to protect her. She traveled under police escort everywhere. If she went to a conference or whatever, the police were there. I remember this, her telling me privately, but I know it's been out there publicly. They were screening her mail, right? They actually, she couldn't open a letter in the 80s, mind you, because she was worried about a bomb being in it. So they had to have the squad check it. Think about the resources involved in that, right? But here's the point that she made to me that I'll make now, which is it wasn't men doing it. The threats were coming almost universally from women. They literally proved her point, right? They were exhibiting and promulgating violence towards her while saying that women can't be violent. Let that sink in, people, right? They literally proved everything she said was true. And those threats continued for decades afterward. So now, of course, feminists say that none of it was true. She made it all up. She didn't make it up. Police were involved. You think they didn't check into it? Come on, right? And then you talk about other things that she went through. Just kind of highlight some of them. Lindsay's talking about Lindsay has been called a traitor. So was Erin. Um, you know, the funding for the shelters that she was working with got cut off. How does that help women? If you're arguing where we need to help women and you're trying to get the funding pulled so that it could be moved to other shelters that fit the paradigm, it's insanity, right? And that's, by the way, that's what they did. So they pulled all the funding from her organizations and moved them over. That's why she ended up leaving a lot of them. They were the organization she was in ultimately were taken over by feminists or activists that supported feminist causes. So they drove her out, much like they drove Warren out of now, right? Warren Farrell was on the board of the National Organization of Women. They loved him at first till he made the mistake of saying, you know what? I'm hearing some of the things from men, and you know what? They have some good points they're bringing up. I mean, it was that simple. He's talked about it on my podcast a couple of times, and they drove him out. So afraid of are they of any discussion that they will do whatever they need to, including violence, to stop it. And about a month or so ago, you saw what they did to Charlie Kirk. Different scenario, but same result, right? They will not allow conversation. It has to be a zero sum game, and they will do anything and everything they need to stop it, to stop any conversation on it. And that's where we as a group need to say, no, we're not going to be silenced. That's one of the reasons I went back on TikTok after leaving it. It's part, I've talked about it in videos I did. A lot of it had to do with them trying to silence Charlie Kirk. And I said, you know what? I'm a hypocrite if I let them drive me away. Erin was another reason I thought about that. And Warren. I'm like, you know what? They wouldn't back down. Why the hell did I? So I got back on. But it just speaks to it all.
So interestingly enough, I know we have a troll over in the comment section, but I want to
Ban 'em.
no
Burn 'em. Ban 'em.
no,
Oh,
wait.
oh, wait.
This is further proof that women are being excused, that their horrible, terrible actions are being excused. So I said that Isabella I of Castile was a violent woman, the woman who supported the Spanish Inquisition that killed thousands of Muslims and Jews all over Spanish controlled territory. The woman who led a war against and conquered Granada, that woman, she was not the greatest monarch in history. She was a violent monarch, just like many other monarchs, because monarchs in general are violent, male or female. But this person is saying that, they're the best ever. And
You mean the coward that doesn't even put their name in, has to put their initials in order to hide?
yes, but
That
also
one? Okay.
that
Just
one.
questioning.
Um,
I mean, at least
and,
have the balls or the boobs to put your name out there for
but
all of us to see.
the irony here is that it's exactly what we're talking about. Women get a pass. Violent women whose violence is well documented in world history are being excused. Why?
Well, they're being celebrated in
They're
this.
being celebrated in this case.
This
Now,
person is celebrating their violence because they
now,
believe in violence.
and it is true that violence in the name of, say, good, like say the Civil War or something, the North versus the South. It depends on which side you're on, as to which the victor goes the spoils, or victory or history is written by the victors. But if you look at world history through a worldwide lens, even violence in the name of good is still violence against somebody. I mean, the Allied powers in both the Second World War and the First World War, we did great violence. We did it in the name of good, but the ruthless calculus of war is still the ruthless calculus of war. But I'm using this as an example, a useful idiot, if I may, to point out that exactly what we're talking about, that women's bad behavior, individual women's bad behavior, is constantly and consistently just swept under the rug, or in this case, celebrated.
Right.
And that I'm done now. I'll get off my soapbox. But it's
Well,
very, very interesting that in this particular conversation we're having, this is
while
happening.
while you're on it, I just would like to point out that um, last I knew, I don't believe God would have condoned the Spanish Inquisition, and the third commandment does say, "Do not use the word or do not use the Lord's name in vain." A lot of people are like thinking, "Well, we don't want you to say God damn it or something like that." What it really means is, I don't want you doing anything in my name that has got my, unless it's truly my intent, is what he was referring to. And I think the Spanish Inquisition, as they referred to, clearly shows that that person is, disillusioned. Anyway.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about someone who's, say, celebrating violence, understand who these people are. They're the ones most likely that are perpetuating domestic violence onto someone else, right? They are violent themselves. So in their mind, they have to justify their mindset. That's what's going on here. And they hide behind dummy accounts with their initials, and don't have the balls to stand up and say, here I am, right? And you're seeing that across every spectrum now, politically, right? Where they're justifying the murder of people. Oh, it's a good thing. If they're capable of doing that, they're a lost cause. You cannot reason with someone like that, right? They don't have the ability to have any morality. They don't have it. If they're going to sit there, hide behind dummy accounts, and hurl stuff like this in order to get attention, because that's what they're doing, right? Their lives are so pathetic, so sad, so lonely. Nobody likes them. So the only way they can find any kind of fulfillment whatsoever in life is to go and troll online. It's sad. It really is sad. And the problem is we tend to give them attention when the best thing to do is just cut them off, because then they lose their minds even more. They could go back. They're in mommy's basement. They're probably upset because mommy forgot to cut the cross off their PB and J this afternoon.
They cut it. They cut it this way instead of
And they cut it.
diagonal.
Yeah, and they're 42 years old and they can't get a job. They have no life other than to sit online and harass people because it makes them feel better about life. That's who they are. It's a stereotype, yes, but guess what? It's a stereotype because it's true. And you're seeing that, by the way, with all the rioting and stuff going on, say in Portland, and they're arresting these people, and you're finding out about them, right? Different concept than what we're talking about here, but the same type of people. And that's the point we need to make, is we need to point those people out for who they are, because again, going back to what our topic is about, that's what Erin was doing, was saying, you know what? We are going to point out and hold women who commit violence against men, who are abusers, accountable. And that's not a bad thing. Yet it's been made into a bad thing, right? Uh, you know, and people dispute this, but they killed her dogs. Others were stolen, if I remember right. They being the feminists say that's all, she made that all up and all that. Well, why would Erin lie about something like that, right? Why would she lie about the harassment, the threats? There were actual threats the police found. So that's proof alone she wasn't lying. And oh, by the way, and Lindsay can talk about this, and we've had Sarah Eaton on and a host of other female creators that talk about men. They've all experienced the same exact thing. So are they all lying too? Clearly they're not. And they don't even stop there. They go after the families.
Well,
And you're
yeah. I mean, I've had Mr. Squirrely's military career has been threatened numerous times. My children have received threats, and I honestly kind of have to laugh, not in a haha way, but in a very sad way, because it's better to laugh than cry. Crying is blackmail. That the women who are sitting there claiming that men are the most violent are the ones who are threatening the most violence.
Without question.
Without question. And they're outing themselves. And see, this is what, and Erin knew it too, that if women were really always the victims, then if you are truly a victim of a horrific crime, you don't wish your same anguish on someone else. I don't wish my assault on anyone else, even not even my worst enemy. And yet I have plenty of people online who don't like that I speak for men and boys, or that I want to hold women accountable. So they tell me that they wish that I would be raped again, or that it didn't take. Apparently, it wasn't violent enough, and I deserve to be raped again, which is horrific, because it's not, again, it's to what Dan's point, and to Erin as well, it's not men that are making these threats, it's women. And when you look at it that way, you realize that yes, obviously violence is a human problem, and ironically enough, women are more susceptible to using violence as an intimidation tactic, and like as the first go-to in many cases, than men. Men will snap eventually, and there are some men that will swing punch first. I'm not saying there aren't.
No question.
But by and large, men will only swing when they're backed up into a corner and they have tried almost everything else. Women, on the other hand, in my experience, the first reaction they have is, I want to hurt them. Not, I want to say something to them. Not, I want to talk to them. It's, I want to hurt them. I want to either threaten them myself, or I'm going to get my boyfriend or my husband to threaten, my boyfriend will take you on. I mean, how many men are in prison now because their girlfriend or wife either put them in a position where they had to defend her because she started a fight she couldn't finish, or she basically used them as the loaded gun and pointed it at someone. It's well documented throughout history. We're talking about Isabella Castile. It's well documented throughout history that women use men to commit their violence for them, but that doesn't make them any less guilty. Their hands are still dripping red. They're still, to borrow a Black Widow phrase, their ledger is still full of red. And no, it is not only in the West.
Oh, she went mute. Well, I'll jump in here while she's dealing with the child. To Lindsay's point, though, right, is, and Lindsay, this was a question I wanted to ask Erin, because, and I know she's talked about it, but one of the things I was going to ask her, and I'm going to ask it to you, of all the threats you've gotten over the years, how many of them were actually from men? Versus, now I know the majority of them are women, but how many?
One, and he was very young. Very young.
So let that sink in. One out of hundreds, right? Probably thousands at this point for you, because I know how often it happens to you. I can't speak for Erin, but I know the numbers are probably very similar. But yet the argument they make against her is women aren't violent. They don't threaten. You were talking about something that I just covered in a video that I did. I think it's out. I'm not sure. I lose track on them. But one of the things that, when you're talking about violence being committed, specifically murders, right, is that they love to quote that men kill women more than women kill men. But they're only looking at the total numbers. When you take it down to the percentage of population, the difference is like 0.00002%, which is statistically insignificant, right? They don't want to have that discussion. They don't count that as a problem. They also don't count, to your point you were just making, where women will just harass a guy until he unalives himself. He's still dead. Maybe she didn't pull the trigger on him, but she drove him to do it.
No, but she put the gun in his hand and pointed it at him.
Literally, right? So how is that not her unaliving him? But yet it's dismissed or it's overlooked. It's never charged. Rarely, if ever, is it charged. And it's the same thing to what we're talking about with Erin with domestic violence, right? They're always looking for a way to excuse it, as you pointed out earlier, or to hide it, right? Which is why, and I will tell you this, I've talked about it on the show. I will go swear on whatever Bible or whatever you want me to. I have personally witnessed them take intake forms from men and literally throw them in the trash. Literally toss them and say to me, well, we got to make sure that they're not found out. Yet you want to sit there and go, well, majority of women are, no, your numbers are all BS. Okay. And of course, they'll just say I'm a liar. Why would I lie about that? Why would I make that up? It's, how do I gain in any way doing that? And I'm not alone on that. There are many other women who've said the same thing, that were told to throw them in the trash. Well, we can't let it get out that, blah, blah, blah. And it speaks to how much control feminism has on that particular area and how they've used it to gain control in other areas. You talk about family courts and how things are so rigged against men there. Don't think for a second the domestic violence industry doesn't have a huge hand in that. Huge hand. Okay. It's how they actually have funded a lot of their abilities to do things and get things done is through the funding for domestic violence shelters. A lot of that money does not go to helping victims. It goes into political things, much like you see with Planned Parenthood. You want a fun little thing, and I got to do a video on this. Go look at how much money Planned Parenthood gets from the federal government, or used to, because they cut it. Then go look at how much they donate back to politicians. The numbers aren't all that different. So the money's coming in one bucket and going right back out to the politicians. That funded them. It's all a scam. But yeah, that's where Erin was the leader in that, and getting that out there. Like I said, and I keep reiterating this, 50 years ago, and yet little has changed. Yes, to be fair, it has gotten better, but in reality, very, very little has changed.
Well, the organization that she founded in London that got the first women's shelter opened, she saw them doing this, basically laundering money, paying off politicians and whatnot. And she tried to blow the whistle on them, and they outed her for it. They kicked her out. That, I think, is what actually, in addition to the book, but slightly predating the book, the 82 book, is she started to blow the whistle on a lot of these practices. And the book helped, or the book is really what got everyone to turn on her, but they were already turning on her because because she was calling them out on it. She's like, this is not what I intended my organization to do. She did the right thing. And again, as I keep saying, to her credit, she had this wonderful thing that so many women, so many just people today don't have. It's called integrity. And she would not let them, or she tried not to let them do what they did. She saw an injustice and she refused to be complicit in silence, and she tried to say something against it. And even when they took her platform away, she continued to find ways to try and bring awareness to the fact that these things are happening. And we need more people like her that refuse to be silenced regardless, because that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to silence her, because you got to follow where the money goes. And to Dan, what Dan was saying, the feminist movement gets a lot of money that comes in for the domestic violence shelters or the services for women, and then they turn around and donate to politicians who continue to perpetuate this idea that women are perpetual victims, and that men are, the devil incarnate, the boogeyman. And it's not helping women. It's not helping our society. It's not helping children. The only people it's helping are the people who are making money off of it. Because it's certainly not helping the women they claim to help. Because again, this idea that men are assumed aggressors, and one of the biggest untapped realities of domestic violence is mothers against daughters. Mothers are extremely violent in many
Or
cases.
daughters against mothers.
Or daughters
too, by the
against
way.
mothers too. Women are extremely violent to each other, not just men.
I know of at least 2 cases where daughters that were teenagers brutally attacked their mothers over stupid shit, like like one of them was getting grounded. Let that
And,
sink. I mean, the girl was like 15 years old and beat her mother, not to death, but just short of it.
well, I mean, I've read numerous stories about teenage girls that will be held accountable, and their first go to is violence, to beat the crap out of their mother, or even try and take on their dad. Can you imagine if the same thing? Sons don't do that, because trust me, we'd know if they did. They would be reporting that left, right, and sideways.
I got 4 boys and 2 stepsons, and not one of them have ever challenged me.
Yeah, they don't do that.
No.
Just to answer Steve's question real quick, where was I seeing that in police? He asked, where is this, Dan, in police departments? No, it was in domestic violence shelter that I was affiliated with. I never personally saw it in police departments, but I can tell you, having interviewed, I don't know, 50 cops by now, they will tell you they've been told to squelch the reports. They don't throw them out because they can't, but they'll bury them in a filing cabinet, right? The intake forms, because they asked, what about intake forms? Intake forms is like, if you walk into a shelter, they're supposed to take like your name and all the information. It's on a form. Now I'm sure it's electronic. I mean, you got to remember, this was 7 years ago for me. And technically, that's all supposed to be tracked and reported back. Well, the number of men that came in was a fraction of the women, because men know it's a waste of time to go, but they didn't even want those being found out. They wanted that hidden. They wanted it to be 100% women, and they were working deliberately to make it that way. And by the way, it's not just me saying that. You can go out, and there are plenty of women who worked in shelters that will tell you this is what they were told to do. We're not all lying, which is their, oh, you're all lying. No, we're not. Okay. And as I said, when I was speaking with, Children and Families Committee in New York State, trying to get a shared parenting law passed, the domestic violence industry came out in force and literally testified that she had never seen a woman who was violent. And I said, well, because I followed her, I'm like, well, I'm a male victim of domestic violence. And the look she gave me told me right then and there, this woman is absolutely guilty of committing violence on people. If she could have gotten to me, she would have tried to hit me without question in my mind, right? And again, it's all to hide the reality that Erin first exposed. Because I want to get back and keep talking about Erin on this. She was the one that was brave enough to talk about it first. Nobody else did. Nobody else was. And, like I said, they came for her. There were bomb threats. She got blacklisted everywhere, right? Because she's written, ballpark off the top of my head, 15, 20 books, somewhere in there, right? Highly successful books at first, right? Prone to Violence was highly successful when it came out. Major publishers wouldn't touch her after that because they came for her. Bookstores got picketed. Libraries got told to remove the book. Still are, by the way. Still are. There's one library in New York State that didn't have it. And I asked them about it. Why aren't you carrying this? Oh, we can't carry that book. We can't carry that book. Why? And I got in a whole rigmarole with them. But those things were happening then. They're still happening now. And that's where I put some of the blame on us, because we have to stand up for it. We cannot continue to allow this to happen. Anything that threatens their ideology, they will try and silence immediately, 100%. And
I have a question for you, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
You did a lot of radio work, if I remember right.
Yep.
So, how many times did we see especially in the 80s and the 90s and sometimes the early 2000s, where if a particular singer took a political view, they would have mass call-ins and say, if you play that song again, I will never listen to you again.
Oh, it's still happening to this day.
It still happens. Which, isn't that sad?
I mean, there was some guy that made and it's country music, so I know nothing about it, but I just saw it in the news. He made something that was basically anti-Trump, all right? And they came for him, and I'm like, why? I don't agree with the thing he said, by the way, right? The song is atrocious to me, but I don't like country music, so fair play on that, okay?
Right.
There is no good country music other than Johnny Cash, but he's not country. When that happens on the other side, I don't agree with a word he said. I think the music is horrible, but I would never want him silenced. I would never want it boycotted, right? Ever. Right. You know, I mean, and again, people have said to me, well, what about certain things? And they'll throw at me. And it's like, unless it's an overt threat.
Unless it's an overt call to violence, there's a difference between hate speech and speech that you hate.
Right.
Like somebody recently asked me about Destiny, who's like the far left blogger or whatever he is, podcaster, right?
I have no clue.
He's a complete whack job. I think that's who it is, Destiny, right? He let his wife sleep with other men and talked about how it was good for him and all. The guy's a complete whack job. He's literally calling for violence on his podcast. And somebody asked, do you think his podcast should be demonetized? Because it was. Yes. Because he's overtly saying we should resort to violence. That's the exception I will make, right? But if you're going to go on and say, I hate Trump, fine. I don't have a problem with that. Or I hate Biden, or I hate,
it's free speech.
Jar Jar Binks. I don't care, right?
The ability to talk does not make you intelligent.
Well, first of all, I happen to like Jar Jar Binks, and my wife likes him even more.
My give up.
But I don't care about that. What I care about, though, is if you cross the line. If you want to go picket a bookstore for carrying Erin's book, fair play. I don't have a problem with it. But don't get upset if I picket your store when they put a book in that you like that I don't, right? Which is what they don't allow for. And that's, again, going back to what we're talking about within the domestic violence realm. They do not allow for male victims at all. They want complete control. That's why every argument they make when it comes to funding is if you give $1 to men, you're taking it away from women. No, they're not. I have advocated for funding. There is not one single time I or anyone else that was working with me ever said to take 1 penny out of, say, VEWA. All we say is we want VEMA. Exact funding. $1 billion for VEMA. If you're giving $1 billion to VEWA every year, $1 billion for VEMA. If you're going to have 2,000 shelters for women, all for it. Don't take a one away. Give us 2,000 for men. That's what our argument is. Their argument is if you have a shelter for men, that takes away from the women.
Well, what does that say about them that it has to be a zero-sum game? So, like,
it says they're nuts.
Well, yeah. And that's that stupid girl math. Math is not your friend, girl. And I'm bad at math, but even I'm not that bad. Compassion is not a limited resource. And I've been saying this for years. And two things can be true at once. The sky is blue, the grass is green. Neither of those statements contradicts or invalidates the other. We can help women and we can help men. Arguably, helping women helps men and helping men helps women because violent men create violent women and violent women create violent men who then use it on, children and then so forth and so on. It's a human problem. It is a perpetual motion human problem. And if you're only treating half the problem, you're still going to go off the rails. I mean, can you imagine having a flat tire on both sides and you only fix the one tire on the one side? You're going to ruin the car. But I fixed that tire. Yes, but you're riding on the wheel over here. You can't turn, you can't do anything, and the vehicle is still totaled. So ignoring the other half of the problem, that's like you have two cancers. You have like a lung cancer and say like a liver cancer. You treat the lung cancer and you say, okay, the body's healthy now. No, you still have liver cancer. You're still going to die. Yeah. And it makes no sense because it is not a zero-sum game. And you have to think about who's being helped by this. And it's the people at the top who are getting all the money, who honestly could not care. They do not care two shits about women at all. They care about lining their pockets. They care about staying in office. My personal opinion on that is anyone who's been in office more than 10 years, depending on which side, it needs to go. About. And
I go 12 years, just for the record.
But
two Senate terms, 6 Congress terms, 6 House terms. That's your limit, and you can't cross over. Total separate story. Go on.
But this idea that we're going to focus on one at the expense of the other, that doesn't help. In fact, I would argue that it's hurting the very women that you claim to be so gung-ho to help against.
Well, the argument they make, Lindsay, is, because I've had these debates with them, their argument they'll stick to till they're in their grave is that we shouldn't address any of the issues that men have until the women's ones are solved. And that's that in their mind, that's a bulletproof argument, because everyone knows you're never going to completely eradicate domestic violence. It's an impossibility. We're human beings. There are bad people. That's like saying you're going to eliminate pick your crime. It's never going to happen, right? But that gives them in their mind the out. Well, I'll just make that argument, knowing it'll never happen, and it guarantees we get all the funding. But in the meantime, to your points, half the population or half the side of the car is not getting addressed, or half the cancer. You're going to kill the body by fixing one cancer and not the other.
You're going to cut off your nose to spite your face.
It is literally killing society right now, right? Because this is all intertwined. The thing that people don't want to talk about also, we do, but others don't. When I say others, I mean average people, is the reality that the domestic violence industry funded feminism, and feminism took that money and used it to get us where we are now, which is we've got a bunch of lunatics running around the country, mostly peaceful protesting by burning down cities or killing people. They're all feminists. Every single one of them is a feminist.
Which is proof that women are more violent than men.
Hello. Go look at the arrests that are happening. How many of them are women? There's quite a few, right? But yet your argument to me, not you, but them, women aren't violent. Bullshit. And you said earlier, how can you think that way? Or what? I don't forget exactly how you say it. The reason they think that way is because they are so delusional, so mentally incapable of getting out of that bubble they're in, that they can never acknowledge it, because it would literally destroy them as a human being.
I don't necessarily think it's lack of acknowledgement. It's that they have conflated quantity of harm or degree of harm with violence. So if you have a man your size and my size, if I punch a wall, I'm more likely to hurt my hand. You might actually dent it or put a hole through it. And they claim that because the man does more violence, it's more visible or more harm, more broken bones, then, well, that's real violence. But a woman slapping her husband, that's nothing. That isn't violence.
That's what I mean.
I would actually argue that violence at all, it doesn't matter if you have a bruise or not, because not only are you getting the physical reminder of the violence, there's a sociological, psychological thing that someone who is supposed to love you wants to hurt you.
Yeah, and that's where Lindsay popped off there. Where'd you go? You kind of
I don't know.
Oh,
it's Curtis's fault.
Fix it, producer. But to your point, where I would disagree with you is you're right in a lot of instances, but there is literally a pretty large segment of them that will not ever acknowledge that women can be violent. Because they can't. They see it. They literally see it. But they are so far gone, and it is so deeply ingrained. I am now making the argument, feminism is now in women's DNA. that they cannot allow for the possibility because it's going to blow everything apart for them. If you truly believe to your very core that no woman on earth in the history of mankind has ever been violent, and some of them do believe that, and you see a woman doing it, you're going to go, right? And that's
Now,
what happens
see,
to them.
I'm gonna completely out myself here because proof that women are more violent than men. So if I had a woman say that no woman has ever been violent before, my response would be to punch them and go, "Oh, want to bet?" Just to prove them, prove the
And
point.
just for the record, we never advocate violence. Let me put
We
that
never
out there.
advocate violence, and I would never actually do it.
But
But
if you did, I'd have your back, just for the record.
but the absurdity of the statement would make me think, like, oh yeah, we're incapable of it. Watch this. Not because it's just
But you know what they would do in that instance?
they would tell me I'm not a woman.
No, they would tell you you've internalized your misogyny.
Of course.
And yes, they would tell you you're not a woman. That's what they do tell you, right?
Well, no, yeah, they do tell that. And ironically enough, the women who sit there, the women who sit there and say that I've internalized my misogyny, ironically, are the ones who are the most misogynistic women I have ever met. Because again, it is misogyny to claim that a woman is not equally as capable as a man of being human with all the faults thereof, including violence or capacity for violence.
Their argument is we can do anything a man can. Okay, then you
Okay,
can
well then you can be a violent, vindictive shrew. No, we can't.
Oh, that's not true. Well, which is it? You can't be both. It's one or the other, right? But I mean, it goes to why we need to celebrate Erin because hopefully she hasn't passed or has. I don't know how to even put it. There's no right or wrong way to say
I hope
that.
she's
Right?
no longer. I
I
hope
hope she's
she's not
comfortable.
suffering.
Yes, thank you for fixing me on that. Get me out of that hole I dug myself. Um, whether she's passed or not, she's going to shortly. We need to be mindful. And by the way, you're going to hear a lot of people come out against her in the next few days. We need to call those people out. Trust me, I will be.
Well, they're always easier to speak ill of the dead.
Exactly. We need to call those people out. We need to out them, right? And say, no, this is not the case. Go read the books. Well, you can't talk to her, but I have talked to her through email. She was so giving to me. I'm a nobody to her, right? But I wasn't a nobody to her. I mattered, and I knew that I mattered in having these conversations with her. And she would, we set up a date one time, and I got an email that morning. She goes, "I'm so sorry, blah blah blah. I'm really struggling. Not, it's a bad day, blah blah blah." And I won't get in too deep in the weeds on it because she was very specific with what was going on. And all I could think of as I was reading that email is what humility on her part. What an amazing person that she's not feeling well. For those that don't know, she's had cancer for a while, right? For those that don't know, when you're going through that, it's not fun.
No.
But she didn't care about herself in that instance. She cared about me because she felt horrible for me that my nothing podcast, compared to some of the big ones out there, was so important to her. And I remember reading that. I just sat, well, I was in the other room at the time, sat in the room and just stared at the screen for 5 minutes going, I don't know that I could ever be that good of a person, And yet they just came for her and still do. And that's why moving forward, we need to make sure she's not forgotten. She's not put down because, especially as men, she's done more for men, I'd argue, than probably anyone. I mean, Warren's right there. But other than those two, in my opinion.
But I'm not entirely sure Warren. She opened the door. She was the first. She opened the door.
As far as opening the shelter and then running with it from there, yeah. But Warren's right there with her. I mean,
Warren's there with her.
I don't want to turn it into a contest because there's no point in that. But I those two are on the Mount Rushmore, and yet they don't get the credit for it, and they should. And I would argue neither one of them is a men's rights activist. They talk about
They
our
get
issues, but they're
they
not
they
men. They're human activists.
they talk about our issues and they get lumped in with our side because the other side basically
Have to.
excommunicates them.
Exactly. They have
I
to
get
lump
lu-
them.
I get lumped in with men's rights activists. I don't claim that I am one. I say I advocate for men and boys, but I don't consider myself a men's rights advocate. I consider myself a humanist, and because I would advocate the same thing for women and women and girls, except they have their own champions.
Mhm.
They have enough champions on their side. Men and boys do not.
Or their issues have been addressed.
Or
Right.
their issues have already been addressed, and these issues have not been. But I lost my nut. Damn it! I made it almost all the way through the show without losing or dropping a nut. Be proud of me.
We got an hour and 19 minutes in, and then poof, gone. You blew it. I have no idea where you were going, so I can't help
I
you
have
out
no
of there.
idea either.
Well, I'll pick it back
Shit.
up. I'll pick it up. But like you were talking about how you feel about women's issues, I actually agree with you, right? I do consider myself a men's rights activist. I come at it more from I talk about men's issues, which quotes makes me a men's rights activist, right? But I don't, they're trying to turn that into a bad term, right? You're
Yeah, they're
red
trying to.
pilled, you're far right, you're all these other labels they want to stick on you. The media's doing it.
Which ironically, I remember when the documentary, Cassie J's documentary, the Red Pill came out, and I remember what it used to mean. The original meaning of red pill, which is actually comes back to the Matrix.
I was going to say, yeah.
But it's been co-opted and twisted by the media to mean something that it doesn't mean, and they've done a decent job of it. In just like symbols that have been co-opted over time. For example, I'm probably going to get in trouble, but the mean mustache man used a particular symbol that you would, believe it or not, have been found in ancient Egypt. It has existed far before, predates the mean mustache man, and yet it has been co-opted and now it means something hateful. And that is what they're trying to do right now with men's rights activists, and that's what they're trying to do now with the term red pill, manosphere, is if they discredit it, if they make it bad, then they legitimize hatred for it or silencing it, which ironically is what they did to Kirk too. They called him all these names so they could justify killing him.
It's funny because they're trying to, and it could, I don't want to get too far in politics, but it could come back to haunt them, right? Because they're trying to label those of us that speak out on men's issues as far right. You know the words, I'm not going to use them, right? But in reality, much like you're seeing on the political side, the average person is going, no, they're not, right? People who listen to me that are not on the men's side, so to speak, centrists, will acknowledge that I also call out men all the time, right? Do I do it as much as I call out women? Not even close. And I'll be the first to tell you that. It's not my job to do that. There are plenty of women out there doing, to your point earlier, they're doing that, right? That doesn't mean I don't acknowledge that there are bad men out there. I just not going to sit there and go, every man is bad. But again, it goes to that zero sum mindset that they live by. If one man is bad, all 4 billion on the earth are. But if one woman is bad, she doesn't exist. There's no such thing. That's literally how they think. And you're seeing this play out not just within the men's issues and women's issues. You're seeing it play out politically across every issue on the spectrum. They cannot get out of their own way. They are so far gone at this point. And the point that really needs to be driven home is feminism's the reasons why. Feminism is a cult. I have done videos on that. They match every single definition of what makes a cult. Every single one. And if Erin did nothing else, she pointed that out 50 years ago. She didn't quite say it that way, but you go read the book. A lot of my ideas, by the way, are pulled from her books indirectly, right? I don't blatantly steal, or Warren's for that matter, right? They shaped me. I'm trying to shape the next group to come along, the Lindsays of the world, if you will. Because, I got 10, 15 years left on this earth. Somebody's got to follow me. But we need to all start honoring what the work that Erin did and Warren, because Warren's up there too. Warren's 84, I think. They laid the groundwork for the rest of us, and it's on us to pick it up and start running with it. And that means calling it out, not being afraid to be shut down. And I was guilty of it on TikTok, right? I took my TikTok down because there was a very direct threat made to my wife, not me, to my wife, that I had to take very seriously. And that's where we all need to say, no, no more. And I think politically we are seeing that, but that's not enough. We need to do it with men's issues as well, which means we need to get in both parties' faces and say, no, we're not going to sit back and not allow you to have a VEMA on there, which to kind of segue in, you're going to like how I do this, Lindsay. We are going to be in DC in early November. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is VEMA, Violence Against Men Act, right? Because at a federal level, we're not going to change custody law. That's a state's issue, right? We're not going to change some of the other things that you guys all would want us to talk about because they're not federal issues. They are, but they're not, right? You can argue Title 4D and all this other stuff. I agree with you, okay? But directly, one of the biggest ones we could get is a Violence Against Men Act. And honestly, I think that should be a focus going forward for all of us.
Absolutely.
And I'll argue this. There are, like I said many times, there are 2,000 shelters in the U.S. for men or for women. I don't need 2,000. Give me one in each state right now. That's it. That's my argument to politicians. One in each state. We'll build after that, right? And you could do that. Now, VEWA gets roughly, I'm rounding, $1 billion a year. You could put a shelter for men in all 50 states for $50 million, $1 million a state. And that's well funded. You could do it for $500,000, by the way, because I've done the numbers, right? $1 million per state. Could be federal money, state money, local money, because that's all. The domestic violence shelters for women get money from all three levels. That's all I want. Give me that under VEMA. You're going to tell me, how many billions have we sent over to Ukraine? How many billions have we sent to study, tortoises fucking in Uganda, okay? Give me that $1 million that was spent on that, and let's use it to open a shelter for men. What do you think is going to do more good? So what the hell is that just came in?
I'm reading it now.
Oh. I'm not reading it. I just scanned it quick. It's not bad. That's the ask that we're looking at the federal level. And that's hopefully we'll be having a congressman on. We're working on it. And some other people will be coming on. So more to come on that. If you are in the DC area, I would like to do a meet and greet at some point. I did reach out to Cousin Carl. I have not heard back from him. I love him, by the way. And a couple other people I know in that area. So if you're in the DC area, stay tuned. But we're going to be talking to politicians and hopefully getting at least one on the air with us. And stuff like this is what we need to be doing, if for no other reason, moving forward to honor Erin's work over the last really 60 years, not 50. She's an amazing woman. As I said, she's on my Mount Rushmore of people who've spoken out on men's issues. I'm not calling her a men's rights activist because she's not, right? She cares about human beings and people, and I can speak to that personally in my conversations via email with her. And seeing her speak at a conference one time where it was all about human, right? yes, she spoke about male victims a lot, but she always had the context there that there are women who are victims too. And she talked about some of them and the horrific stuff they go through. She never once took away from them. It was always, though, it's both sides that are both the problem and the victim, right? And to me, that makes the ultimate in a human being.
I can't really follow that up. I mean,
I stole all the thunder, didn't I?
you stole all of my thunder, but I found my nut.
I found two. I had to go there. By the way, you didn't say anything about my sunburn. Did you notice my sunburn?
You're always red though in
No,
the camera.
I am really red because
Well, we couldn't tell because you're not any redder than normal.
Exactly.
No, let's see. I actually am. You can actually see the raccoon eyes from my.
Oh,
we went to Charlotte this past weekend to see my Dolphins get the choke job of the year done with the Panthers. So I'm up in the stands. I want to close on a positive note. I love to trash talk at games. But Dolphins go up 17-0 in the first basically quarter. I am trash talking like you wouldn't believe. Yeah, we lost. They got me so bad. But you know what? It was all in good fun. And that's what makes it fun, right? Is everything I gave to them, they gave it right back to me. And at the end of the day, we were all fist bumping, and
you wouldn't have it any other way.
I loved every minute of it.
I bet.
My wife was shut up, stop doing this, right? Because I was embarrassing her but they gave it right back to me, and she became best friends with the couple next to us. So,
oh Lord, Steve.
what is going on? Oh, Steve said cousin Carl. Yes, cousin Carl.
No. The bottom one. The bottom one.
If you jump time zone. Oh.
No.
Do you eventually get?
Do you eventually get?
Oh, I got it. Okay. Really good. Wrap it up.
Alrighty.
All right, guys. We will see you next time. Well, no, I won't. Announcement: I will not be here next week.
What? I already knew that. So it's me and Curtis, the Bald Brotherhood, next week.
We'll have to pick something really appropriate for that one.
You are going to have to carry the show by yourselves. I will not be the problem, and at least I won't be.
Where did you say you're going? Universal.
Universal.
Minions. Go there first.
Of course.
Minions is the best ride there. I hope it's still there. I don't even know.
It's still there.
Yeah, Minions.
It should be still there.
Hands down, Minions. And don't go to Disney.
No, we're not. Although we are staying at a Disney resort.
Oh, I know. I know which one. Same one I stayed at, right?
I doubt it.
All right. Well, here we are.
Talk off air. Wrap it up.
Bye, guys.